Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Sorry I haven't been able to stream the last couple weeks. I got kind of a nasty cold from work after the new year, and I just was not up to streaming the last couple weeks. The flip side of that is that I have been crocheting, just kind of laying in bed watching movies and crocheting away, so I've got a lot of stuff to show you. Haven't done a whole lot of shopping or anything like that, so we don't have much to unbox. I have a couple of Leither Co. boxes that I want to show you guys as well, and then I'll turn it over to any of your questions. As always, if there's video, audio problems like that, throw those in the live chat, and we'll get them taken care of as quick as we can. I hate for you guys to sit and listen to bad audio that we can fix real quick. So welcome to everyone who's out there. Not much going on in the chat as far as I can see, but welcome anyway. I'm going to get started and show you guys a few things that I've been working on. The other thing is if you guys have any questions about crochet or yarn or anything that we're not talking about, you want to see more of something that I already showed, anything like that, just put those comments, questions in the live chat, and we'll discuss those as we go. So, I think the thing that I'm most excited about is this hat that I finished. So this is a yarn that I unboxed just a couple of weeks ago, maybe the last stream before Christmas, or potentially, yeah, I think it was the last stream before Christmas. I unboxed this yarn. This is a new Lion brand yarn. It's not even on their website. It's also not on Ravelry, which is super weird. But it is available at Joann Fabric. This is Lion brand Shimmery. As far as I can tell, Shimmery is basically the same yarn as Lion brand Scarfy, with a little bit of a change. So I say the same yarn, meaning it's roughly the same weight and has a very similar feel and look to it. However, I believe Scarfy is like an 80-20 acrylic wool blend. Shimmery is 99% acrylic and 1% other, and the other is this metallic that you see sparkled in here. So I did the sparrow hat. I don't remember the actual name of it. Do you have it in Discord? Yeah, it's Sparrow something, but if you can get me a designer. But it's got these cool, like, they're sort of like cables, but it's the Sparrow Beanie by Haley Bailey. Is that what that says? Yeah. So Sparrow Beanie by Haley Bailey. I made the adult size, and it's just got these cool, like, sort of cables that make kind of an arrow shape. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it, actually. And a couple of people who didn't realize, like, I made it and it wasn't just something that I bought. So, one of the weird things about working with Shimmery is that all of the sparkly stuff seems to just be in the black section. So, if you look at the hat, maybe if we go into a zoomed in version, you can see here, like, the black sections are very sparkly. But then when you move to a blue section, there's almost no, the sparkle stuff is called stellina. There's basically no stellina in the blue sections. And based on just a sort of look around on the other balls I have, that seems to hold true. So this is the color Milky Way, and it has sort of a gold stellina in it. It looks like all of the stellina is in the brown sections, and the cream sections have none. The blue color is called Blue Moon, and then I have this black one, and it looks like, for the most part, it looks like the sparkle is in the black in this one as well. This one's called Eclipse. So, I guess just be aware that if you're working with this yarn that it's going to have that issue. And I will probably do a full review on this yarn, but I kind of wanted to show you guys first and show you what I'm working on. So a couple people saying hi, so welcome. Thanks for joining us. Sorry I haven't been streaming the last couple weeks, but I'm glad to see everyone back and joining us for tonight's stream. So the other thing that I did that wasn't part of this pattern was I sewed a button on the inside here. And then I'll grab the other one here. This pom-pom goes on with like an elastic, like a hair tie. And so what I did is I tied a knot in the elastic about halfway down and wrapped it around the button. And then I wrapped the elastic around a bunch and just put it over top of the button again. So if I want to, I can take this pom-pom off for like washing, because the pom-poms don't usually survive so well, and they especially won't go through the wash machine and dryer very well. So I made it so it's removable and so that I can tighten down about as tight as I can get it. I hate when they're like flopping all over the place. So that's how I decided to attach it. I probably also could have sewn it on directly, but this worked for me. So just an idea if you're trying to attach a pom-pom, that you can sew a button on the inside. It doesn't bother me. It hasn't so far gotten like stuck in my hair or anything like that. So, yeah, so that's my new hat, and I've been wearing it the last few days, and I don't know, I've liked it so far. The shimmery was relatively easy to work with. I didn't have to pull a lot of stitches out. I will say, though, it is a single ply, pretty loosely spun yarn. And I did run into problems when I was tightening the hat down. So this was a bottom-up hat, and you just were supposed to work it and then pick up every stitch around and pull tight, sort of like a drawstring. And when I did that and pulled tight, it just totally failed. So I was able to pull it all back out, back a couple stitches off, add new yarn in, and redo it a little bit gentler. But if you didn't know how to fix it, it would have been pretty disastrous because you couldn't have pulled the hat tight again. So, I guess be very, very careful if you're working with a yarn that's single ply, and loosely spun, that you can just pull those plies apart without really any effort. I can see if I can show you what I mean here.
I had the same thing happen with another yarn, didn't I? Which yarn was that?
Yeah, you had the same problem when you were making one of the hats, and I had to fix it. What did we make that was single ply? I'm just looking around at yarns and hats laying around. I don't remember. Red Heart Roll With It Melange. Red Heart Roll With It Melange. So we got a couple of circular knitters I showed on one of the streams. We got a big one I got for Christmas, and then since then, my husband and I have ordered another one, and he's been messing with those quite a bit and making a lot of just really simple knit hats. I made a hat that I really liked. It's around here somewhere. Out of the Red Heart Roll With It Melange. And then he made this hat, which is a knit version of the hat that I made. And when he pulled it tight, this is also a single ply, loosely spun yarn. When he pulled it tight, the ply just separated. And so I had to do a similar thing where I just went through and picked up the stitches again and sort of fixed it. But it's not super easy. And when you first do it, it just feels like it's an utter disaster and everything's ruined. You can generally recover it, but it takes a little bit of skill and knowing, how you constructed it to fix it. So just be very careful. It looks like these single ply yarns are gaining popularity. But they take a little bit of additional knowledge to work with. So that is Shimmery. For those of you interested, it's a 100-gram ball, 219 yards or 200 meters. It's a number 5 bulky weight yarn. They recommend 5.5 millimeter knitting needles or 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. Like I said, there's no listing for Shimmery on Ravelry as of like last weekend. It's also not on Lion Brand's website. So what I did is I used a pattern that suggested Scarfy. I did the math. Scarfy comes in 150 gram balls, and for that you get like 300 yards, and the math works out really, really close that this is a very, very similarly weighted yarn. So I used this pattern, which the designer had used Scarfy, and just used that, and it worked out. I ended up with like 2 grams left for making this hat. So you can get about 1 hat out of a ball of Shimmery. And they don't have a recommendation. Usually Lion Brand has some like little logos on the side that says like 1 ball for a hat, 2 balls for a scarf or something. But they're not on here. So if you pick any of this up, let me know what you think of it. And again, I would use Lion Brand Scarfy for if you're looking for pattern recommendations. Because it doesn't have any recommendations on either website. So, I'm going to clear those guys off. Let's see, a couple comments. New Day Crochet said that they're going to purchase some the next time they go to Joann's. And Michelle is just joining us and says hi. So, welcome. What's that? Oh, Tracy also said that she loves the hat colors. Yeah, I really liked how this turned out. I really love how well this pom-pom matches. I'm about 90% sure the pom-pom came from Michaels, but not 100% sure. What do you mean?
That yarn comes in like black,
oh, yeah.
gray, and brown, and blue is the only color pretty much. Like,
yeah.
Very few colors.
So, yeah, that was one of the things. So, since you guys can't see the colorways anywhere, though you could potentially see it on Joann's website. It comes in like 5 colors total. You saw 3 of them here. So, black and white, blue and black, and like cream and brown. It also comes in sort of a weird purple and black, I think. And then another black and white. And I have no idea, based on the website, what the difference between this black and white and the other black and white is. I think the other black and white is called Twilight. They did not have it at the Joann that I went to. I don't know if it's actually black and cream, potentially, or if this brown has sort of a gold stellina, so I don't know if it's black and white with a gold stellina. I have no idea. But based on the pictures on Joann's website, I could not tell the difference between Eclipse and Twilight. But Blue Moon, Milky Way, and then, like I said, I think it comes also in a purple. They didn't have that. New Day Crochet saying one has silver, one has gold. So, that's probably the only difference then. Like I said, I couldn't tell originally from the website. So, yeah. I don't know if they're going to release it in more colors. Like I said, it's not even on their own website. So, I'm guessing at this point it's a Joann exclusive, but usually those at least show up on Lion Brand's website as new yarn. But I don't know. Maybe they're just releasing yarn at a rate that they can't even keep up with. They do release just an absolutely absurd amount of yarn. I was on their website the other day, and there's like 6 more yarns that I've never even heard of. So I might get some of those on order, but trying to work through some projects and get some reviews up. As far as I could tell looking around, there's literally no information about Shimmery on the internet. So, like, my video unboxing it, and then, like, the description of this video will have it, but that's about it. So, yeah. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the hat. I think it turned out looking pretty nice. You guys hear me talk all the time about indie brands and stellina versus a glitter thread that's wrapped around the outside of a yarn. This to my knowledge, is the only big box brand that I can think of that uses stellina instead of a wrapped yarn. Nothing else is coming to mind. Yeah, so what I mean here is you can see mixed into the fiber in the black here are these like short little threads or fibers of metallic. I don't even know really what it is, but it's just these metallic fibers, and you can pick them out if you're picking at them. I can't really get one that'll show up on film. But they're just individual fibers of metal, or probably not metal, but like metallized plastic of some sort. Basically like tinsel. And it's mixed in, and I just think, one, that it looks nicer, and two, that it just feels better to me. Every time I use a wrapped yarn, the wrapped stuff, one, I can feel it on my finger as I'm working it, and it like bunches weird and does weird things. Sometimes it works out fine. Depends on the yarn a lot of times, but this is the only big box, like you can get at Joann, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, that I can think of that has the integrated fibers instead of a wrapped one. Otherwise, you're looking at indie dyed or yarn store brands that have this type of fiber. If there's another one, please let me know. But like I said, this is the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. If I'm being real honest, Hobby Lobby probably has something because they release yarns at seemingly at the same rate that Lion Brand is releasing yarns. So, even if I say that today, it'll probably be obsolete. Like next week, they'll probably release something to compete with this. But as of right now, it's the only one I know of. So, that's that. Moving on. This is a different yarn that I showed you guys, the same time. Brand new yarn. This one I just did one of my favorite fingerless glove patterns. This is Rachie Newen's Rachie Newen Designs. This is the Heart of a Rock Star fingerless gloves. These are sort of my go-to pattern. I made these in a child size, so I won't put them on for you because they absolutely do not fit over my hands. I used Winter Nights. Winter Nights is a very weird, like, sequin yarn. So it's multiple plies, one of which has a sequin every, I don't know, 2 inches maybe. And that's just consistent all the way through. There's just a sequin every 2 inches. So, or so. Making it about a sequin every other stitch or so. I don't really think these are going to be a very good, like, thing to wear. The little sequins are a little bit, like, pokey, and I don't think that's going to get better over time. But they're for a friend's kid, and she really liked the yarn, and I told her I'd make her a pair of fingerless gloves. I don't know if she's going to be able to wear them. Maybe if she wears a pair of stretchy gloves underneath, but I think these are just going to be too itchy and, like, stabby. That being said, I don't think this is necessarily a great yarn for anything that's going to fit snug against the body. So I don't think it's probably fantastic for ear warmers or fingerless gloves or a real snug cowl. It's probably fine for like a looser scarf that you're just going to drape over. So it comes in kind of like springy colors. Might be fine for kind of an open thing that you're just going to drape on you. That's not going to be like stabby, worn real snug. Tracy says it seems more fashion and less function, and that's basically what I'm saying. It's just, yeah, it works nicely. Like, it worked up fine. It is a little bit difficult to frog because the little, like, sequin discs get stuck, and you have to sometimes, like, help them out of a stitch. So you'll like pull like 3 or 4 stitches, and then you'll get a sequin stuck, and then you gotta like, you know, kind of pick it out and then keep going. So, and it is a very halo-y yarn, so you can get a little bit stuck on that, but more so I was getting stuck on sequins. It really wasn't difficult to work with. I hadn't done much work with like fashion yarns. I was a little bit worried about like sequins being like halfway through a stitch when I finished, and that really wasn't much of an issue. I didn't really have any trouble working it up. Pulling stitches out when necessary was the biggest issue here. Let's see. Tamara says hi. Let's see. Trying to catch up before I lose these. New Day Crochet said that they bought a bunch of the Winter Nights and love it. All right. So, sorry, I'm trying to read here. Tamara's asking how can I crochet for babies and adults and where after the hat is finished. I don't have yarn needles. So if you don't have yarn needles and you can't get yarn needles, you can try and use a crochet hook. It won't be super easy, but you can sort of run your hook through some stitches and then try and wrap the yarn around it like a time or two and then draw it through. You can also, if you leave nice long yarn tails, you could make a slip knot. Run your hook through, tighten the slip knot on the hook, and then draw your yarn tail through, pull it off, go back through your stitches the other way, draw your yarn through again. I don't know if I have a video on weaving in ends. I have a section in the corner to corner blanket tutorial where I show you how I weave in my ends, and I go through a bunch of stitches, skip one piece of a stitch, and go back through. You should still be able to do it with a crochet hook. You just need to leave yourself really long yarn tails, and then use your crochet hook. You might have to go down a crochet hook size or two. That being said, yarn needles are usually available pretty much any store. I think right now even Target has them. Walmart definitely has boy yarn hooks. They're usually on the order of like 99 cents. So I would definitely, if you're able to, invest in some metal. I prefer metal. Most places will also have plastic. But Joanne, Michaels, Hobby Lobby definitely all have just basic metal yarn needles. And for sure Walmart and at least my Target right now has a little bitty yarn section, which I'm positive has at least yarn needles in it. You could potentially use a sewing needle if you've got a pretty big one, especially like a darning needle or like a jeans needle. You could potentially use. You probably would want a needle threader. So they make like a little thing that has like a shape like this on the end, and you put it through the needle and it collapses as it goes through, and then it pops back open on the other side. And then you could stick the yarn through and like drag it through the needle. It'd be pretty hard to thread a regular needle with yarn, since they're only designed to take, even like a fat thread is much, much finer than like a lace weight yarn. So, hopefully one of those works, but I think if you have none and you're only going to be able to use crochet hooks, I think you can do it if you leave yourself a long tail, put your hook in, put a slip knot on, and drag it back through. I think that's your best bet. All right, let's see. I think I'm caught up. New Day Crochet said works up nice for a cowl if the stitches are loose. Yeah, I think it would be fine as long as whatever you're making isn't sitting near your body. Like I said, these just, like, I can put my fingers in this end and I know they would drive me crazy. But I don't know if kids will tolerate, like some kids are super sensory, like bothered by clothing or find things itchy, but other kids will just wear whatever you give them and they don't care. So some kids will probably not mind this, and it's very kid friendly. It reminds me of like mermaid stuff. And sequins are on like every piece of kids' clothes right now because they have the ones that you can brush back and forth. And so a lot of kids right now are just used to being stabbed by sequins just all the time. I was at Target the other day and they had a pair of kids' pants just like end to end completely covered in sequins. The whole thing you could brush back and forth. And all I could think is how ungodly uncomfortable they must be. Because like no matter what, you can brush most of them the same direction, but a few like stab out in all different directions. And so like if you just have to sit in a chair at school all day, like you're just going to be stabbed by sequins all day long. So you can make some more things to stab them with sequins, I guess, is the end of that sentence. But yeah, Winter Nights came in a surprisingly few colors as well. I think it comes in like 4 or 5 colors. Real quick, I know I've mentioned this before, but just for anybody interested, 100-gram ball, 186 yards or 170 meters. It's a number 4 weight yarn. 65% acrylic, 35% polyester. I would guess that's exclusive of the sequins unless they're made of acrylic or polyester. That seems unlikely. They recommend a 5mm knitting needle or an eye hook, which is a 5.5mm knitting needle. I did work these up with an eye hook. And these are the little logos that I was talking about before, absent from the Shimmery label. But what you can see here is it says 2 balls for a scarf, 1 ball for a market bag, and 1 ball for a hat. And I used, I don't know, probably about half a ball on a pair of kids' fingerless gloves. So that's what we've got for Winter Nights. Last thing before I go, the colors that I have here are Empowerment and Whisperfection, and I made the gloves out of Whisperfection, which is this lilac purple color here. All right. New Day Crochet asking everyone to hit the like button. Thank you very much for the reminder. Hitting like sort of early on in the stream, if you're enjoying it, is helpful to us. It seems to get YouTube to show it to more people. Like if they just go to youtube.com, it shows up in like recommended. Just because we're live streaming and like the more people liking it, it seems to draw more people in. So if you're enjoying the video and you'd like to hit like, that does help us out a little bit. All right. This is just sort of a quick thing. I have a old live stream where we show how to do a crochet edge blanket. This is a crochet edge blanket that I whipped up for my sister's goddaughter. So she has a friend who has a daughter, and that kid is her goddaughter, and so it was her birthday recently, and I made this up for her. She's really into Frozen. This is actually old Frozen fabric from the last time Frozen was popular, that I had on a shelf over here, and so I just put a real quick border on this. This is actually the same border that is on... What is that blanket? It was Parfait Layers. So it's just a wiggly little border that I put around Parfait Layers. So it was 1 row of single crochet and then single crochet in the front loop, 2 chains, single crochet in the back loop, 2 chains. And so every stitch you go back and forth, front loops and back loops with 2 chains in between every stitch. And it just gives you sort of just this lightly wavy little border. It has a little bit more bulk than just a single crochet. It doesn't have giant holes. They're a little bit bigger because I worked with Velux, but they're not enormous holes. So I'm not worried about like hands getting caught in there or anything like that. But This is a I've mentioned this before, but this is a really good way to get a really fast kids, sorry for hitting the mic. I thought I was lower than it. Really good way to get a fast present together. I did this in one evening. Came downstairs, punched the holes, did 2 rounds of crochet around the blanket, and it was done. Sewed in my ends. Maybe 4 hours worth of work total. So, any yarn will do. Like I said, I used Velux here. We have a full review on Lion Brand Velux. I couldn't find the label for the ball that I used. It takes very little yarn, so it's a good way to use up some scraps. And you can do like 2 different colors if you want. Like you can do the single crochet border and then a second border in a different color. So you've got a lot of options here, but it's pretty easy to pick up 1 yard scraps at Joann Fabric. A lot of times they'll have a yard in the, what do they call that, remnant area. And a yard of fabric doesn't sound like very much, but it's usually enough to get like a car seat blanket or a real small kid's throw out of. I know that a lot of times people like really big baby blankets, but practically speaking, big baby blankets kind of get dragged around. And it's nice sometimes to just have a nice little baby blanket that just covers 1 to 4-year-old. And then, it's just done. Like, she's into Frozen right now, and she won't be in a year. She'll be back into some other movie that's popular. And this was, I don't know, $6 worth of material and a couple hours of time. So I didn't spend 6 months working on a corner-to-corner blanket for a kid who I absolutely know is going to outgrow the trend. So, anyway, that was another project finished over the last couple weeks. Let's see. All right. This here is a yarn that I'm really excited to do a review on. This is yarn B Dazzling. It's really just a very pretty yarn. So this is the style yarn that I was talking about where the glitter is wrapped around. But this is a pretty good one. I didn't hate working with this. I'll be really honest. It wasn't, some of the glitter yarns, so here, I'm going to back up and explain what I mean there. So if I can get this to untangle here and show you a little piece of it. All right. So this yarn, you'll see there's 2 plies and the glitter is sort of stuck in between the plies. I don't know if you can see this real well. I have a double screen for some reason over here. But so I've got 2 plies and the glitter ply is sort of stuck in between the plies. And so the glitter really holds still in this yarn and is not bad to work with. In something like Simply Soft Party, I think it's called. Simply Soft Party, they basically took Simply Soft and wrapped glitter around the outside of it. And it doesn't really hold still, and it doesn't really, play well at all when you crochet it up. Because the glitter, as you're tensioning it with your hand, you'll be pulling, and the glitter will start to slide down the yarn. And then all of a sudden you end up with, a chunk of glitter that comes through. And you'll have 2 stitches that are all the glitter. And then sort of a stretched out version of what it should look like. And I've tried a bunch of different ways. It just sort of happens. The glitter just ends up bunching up and then you work a really glittery stitch. This one worked really well because they did a good job of integrating the glitter into the center. So like as I run my hand, the glitter's not moving down the yarn and bunching up over here. It's just running through my hand. So Yarn Bee did a really nice job with this yarn. In addition, it's just absolutely gorgeous. The colors are really vibrant. The glitter is fun colored. It's not like this glitter on this ball is purple. The glitter on this one is gold. Just just a little bit different than just some bland silver glitter wrapped around the outside. The yarn's pretty soft. It worked up really nice. For the life of me, I cannot figure out the color repeats. It's sort of mirrored, but then also sort of not. But yeah. So when I worked this up, I started with like a burgundy purple, went to purple, blue, green, gold, like a goldish yellow, orange, darker orange, red, and then back to purple. And so then I assumed it was going to start that over. But what happens here is, so we got back to purple, but now it's going blue, green, green to gold. So now it's mirroring. So you can see that section's mirrored. But then this section doesn't go to mirror again. It, like, where'd the mirror part go? Here's the mirror part. So you can see it went purple through the yellow in the center and then back to purple. But then this one goes purple through each color to purple, but there's no... this is just a set of color change here. There's no mirror in the center. So it's a weird sort of like dual color change thing. It has like a progression and a mirror. So it's still really cool. I really like the way it turned out. And because this cowl, I worked side to side and then joined it. So I actually sort of made a mirror on this side. So it mirrors to purple on this side and it mirrors to yellow on this side. And so it worked out really well for me. But it doesn't do that naturally. Maybe. Here it is. So this color over here, which is called Tropics, my husband made into a knit hat. This was done on a circular knitter, and it's 140 rows on a 22 needle? 48 needle. So it's 140 rows on a 48 needle circular knitter. You just make a long tube, you cinch both ends, and then you turn, like this is a double layer, and then it's sewn at the top. So, it's a, yeah. So worked up, that's what one side looks like, and if I flip it inside out, that's the other side. So you can see all the different color progressions in there. Really nice, slow color changes. Really, really pretty, gradual changes. Somebody wants the name on this cowl, and I'm going to be real honest. I don't remember if I did this from a pattern or if I just picked a stitch pattern. Yeah, I think I just worked this from a stitch pattern, and I don't remember what stitch it was. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what it was called. I will find out and post it in the description of the video. So it'll process, and I'll go back, and we have to add a description. So if you check back in a couple hours, we should be able to get you a stitch name on this. But yeah, this was just a simple stitch, like out of a stitch dictionary. But yeah, I will share that and let you know what I did here. Let's see. Tracy's also saying that she can vouch for the small baby blankets being more useful. That they were more convenient for covering car seats and strollers. Yeah, I agree. I took care of some kids for several years, and little blankets were way better. I made several like big tie blankets and stuff, and they just ended up like squished into the like floorboards of the car, where you just like couldn't move around them. It was just way better to have little blankets to just cover them. Yeah. So back to Dazzling. Dazzling, this is Tropics, and I don't remember the name of this color. I looked all over I have 2 balls of this. I looked all over for it. I couldn't find it. If you want to pull Dazzling up and find out what the name of this one is, but I really, really like this, sort of jewel-toned rainbow that I got out of this very pretty cowl. So, yeah. Real quick on Dazzling. Let's see. It is 98% acrylic, 2% metallic polyester. Comes in a 100-gram ball, 249 yards or 228 meters. It's a number 4 weight yarn. They recommend a 4.5 millimeter knitting needle, which is a US 7, and a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, which is an I9 hook. And then again, this is Tropics, and this is Sunburst for the colors. So, very, very highly recommend this yarn. Worked up really well on the circular knitter, my husband's saying. Worked just fine for me crocheting. I really like the way the colors look. And I just really like the gold in there. It just, something about it's very different. So, alright, moving these guys off to the side. Let's see here. So, I also have, if you've still got Hobby Lobby's website, you could get me a color name on this as well. This is Yarn Bee Color Play. I used both balls, and I don't know where I put the labels. There must be like a bin of yarn that I'm missing, that has all of this information. We liked this because it looks kind of like ribbon candy. But it's sort of a rainbow mixed with white. And it's got some brown, some green, some purple, some burgundy, some navy blue, lots of different colors mixed in here, some kind of like mint green. And I just worked a pretty simple cowl. This is all half double crochets, where the half double crochets are worked in the 3rd loop. So if you look at the top of a stitch and you've got 2 loops, and normally the one closest to you is your front loop and the one further away is your back loop, on a half double crochet there's a loop on the back side behind your back loop. And so if you tip your stitch over, you can work into this 3rd loop, and what happens is it tips all your stitches over, and so you get the fronts of them, and it looks a little bit more like knitting, and you get kind of this like springy texture, because you get a little bit like ribbed stitches. The inside is actually also really pretty. When you work in the 3rd loop, you get kind of a weird different texture on it as well. So, I don't know. Very, very simple cowl. Just, like I said, it's just half double crochets worked in the 3rd loop. I used 2 full balls of this. It's a very tight, heavy scarf. But it has a surprising amount of drape. So even though it's really, really thick and heavy, it still drapes okay. So I can kind of like get it to bunch and wear okay. Where, do I still have that scarf? This scarf here I made out of a heavy yarn, and it like stands up on its own. There's just no real drape to this cowl at all. But this one drapes pretty nicely. It also does, like, it doesn't have its own, like, exoskeleton. So I can get it to stand up, but this one really just wants to, well, now they're, now it's not cooperating, but this one's very rigid and doesn't really want to collapse on me at all. I probably ought to just like sew the bottom of this shut and make a basket out of it or something.
They both kind of look like bags if they had straps on them.
Yeah, if they had bottoms and straps, they would be bags. But this one, I think legitimately I could just sew and it would be a basket. But this one is a little bit floppier. Worked out much better. All right. That's color play. Did you find a color? Weekender. That's right. So this is color play in the colorway Weekender. Again, a Hobby Lobby yarn. This one down here is a cowl that I made out of Lion Brand Thick and Quick, mandala. So, and I wasn't super thrilled with this project. The yarn worked up fine, and the colors were very pretty. It just this, like when you actually put it on, is more like a like I don't know, neck brace. Yeah, my husband said armor, but yeah, it's like I don't know. You can't really get it to be a cowl. It just wants to be a neck brace. I feel like a turtle or something. So I wasn't really thrilled with how it turned out. It just wasn't floppy enough to be what I wanted it to be. But it probably would be fine as something else. Just didn't work for that cowl with that stitch. All right. Last thing I've got here is see if I remember what this is called. I believe this is Plymouth Yarn Pendenza. We did an unboxing of this if you want the stats on it. It's 100% mercerized cotton. I do know that much. And I worked this little cowl here. I can put the link to the cowl pattern in the description later on. But it's just like a little mini shawl. You work this up with the little shells on the end as you're working the rows, so you don't have to go back and put a border on. I really need to block this. Cotton doesn't block as well as wool, but still better than acrylic or something like that. But these little shells on the end, if they were blocked and stood out a little bit nicer, I think they would look just a little bit nicer. They're a little bit like bunched and curled right now. So I think just a light blocking on this, maybe with a tad bit of soap or starch or something just to help hold it up. But really, really nice to work with. Worked up very nice. It, like I said, it's mercerized cotton. It's got this beautiful shine to it. And more intense colors than you normally see on cotton. Oh, you want to, we're going to switch to a close-up view. But, yeah. So, you can just see, like, the colors are a little bit more intense than normally you see with cotton. It's got a little bit more shine and shimmer to it. That's from the mercerization. It just gets this really nice sheen. I have this in this sort of muted purples colorway, and then I have one that's in like a bright pink, blue, purple, aqua colorway. I don't think either had a name. But yeah, I really was happy with how this turned out. Plymouth is a local yarn store brand. We did an unboxing when we came back from Michigan. We got this at that Arnie's in central Michigan. Or north central Michigan. But I haven't played too much with how it wears, but it wears something roughly like this. I think it'll be really nice over like a tank top in the summer. A lot of times I don't want to like show my whole shoulder, but this kind of just drapes on both sides. And depending on how I reposition it, it just covers. It's cotton, so it's super lightweight. But yeah, it really works up really pretty. The pattern... I wish you were logged into my Ravelry so you could just look at what I've looked up recently. I sent it to you on Discord. That's about all I can remember. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head. My husband's looking to see if he can find the pattern. If he can't, again, I'll put it in the description. But yeah, I hate being on my phone, like, on the stream, but I know I could pull it up. It's probably in, like, my phone downloads, the pattern name. Okay. He's gonna look around and see if he can find it, and we'll post it in the chat if he finds it. Okay, he's got it. The Cove Neck Cowl by Michelle Dunaire. And so he's gonna put that in the chat so you guys have it. I think it's a paid pattern. It was pretty well written, if I remember correctly. But pretty straightforward pattern. I think it's just double crochets and a couple little shells. Oh, actually, no. This was one that I had complaints about the way it was written. It was written very strangely. It was still understandable, but if you end up buying it, they instead of, so normally when you have a pattern and there's a special stitch, the special stitch is just called that special stitch. What I found really strange about this was that there was a special stitch called the shell, and then they had a second special stitch called a 3 shell. And it was just the same as 3 of the shell. Like, it was extra confusing for no good reason. But otherwise it was sufficiently clear, and I think would be fine. It was just very, like, on my part, kind of nitpicky, but just was a little on the strange side as far as patterns go. I have a tendency to like my patterns written a particular way. But I don't know, like, they're fine another way. I just have a preference. So, sorry. But yeah, I guess no harm in them being weird, but I just have a way that I like them. Even working up this whole, like, cowl shawl thing, I had a pretty good amount of this yarn left. Probably not enough to make a pair of fingerless gloves. I think there's probably only about, 25, 30 grams here, if I was guessing. But if you had a second ball, you could probably get 2 cowls. I think you could probably get 1 fingerless glove out of what's left here. So if you had 2 balls and you made 2 cowls, you'd probably have enough for a pair left over. Otherwise, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do with this. I probably could have just worked a few more rows and just run this ball out. But then it probably would not fit as snug like a cowl. So there's that. But pretty happy with this project as a whole. I'm looking forward to wearing it this summer. All right. Last thing. So I've shown you guys these a bunch of times. And I've told you that I really enjoy getting them, but I haven't really worked them up so much. Real quick, New Day Crochet is suggesting dishcloth, and Shalene's suggesting a headband out of what's left in that yarn. So, either of those are viable options because it's, a headband worked with a pretty airy pattern. I think there's enough yarn, and a dishcloth because it's cotton. It's not dishcloth cotton, but cotton's cotton. So.
Does it still absorb as well if it's mercerized?
It should still absorb well enough to be a dishcloth for mercerized. It might affect it a little bit. A non-mercerized cotton might be a little bit more absorbent, but it should still pick up water with mercerization. All right. So I've opened a bunch of these for you guys before, and I really, really like getting them. I haven't used the yarn like I should be, mostly because I'm constantly just working on all sorts of stuff, and I haven't just set aside time to work on the things out of these boxes. I don't remember if we opened December's. So I'm going to show you what's in December's. That's this box. So every box from this company here contains a hand-dyed ball of yarn. So this is Avocado Tweed DK. It's 85% merino, 15% Donegal Nep, which is these things. I always say that they look like floor sweepings, but they're like little bits mixed in that give it like a really nice heathered look. It's very similar to the Claddagh yarn from Good For You that I've shown a bunch of times on stream. It has this Donegal like bits. I don't actually, I really haven't, if I'm being honest, have never looked into what is unique about those. Donegal's Irish, which is probably where the Claddagh name comes from, but really, really pretty green here. With that, you get a hook, and I have the hook for this one pulled out for reasons that I will get into in just a minute. So I got this beautiful hook. It's a 5.5 millimeter eye hook. That originally came in this pretty little box, which I closed in the tissue paper. I'm going to get rid of the tissue paper here. All right. Tissue paper's out of the way. And then I gotta flip this over and cover the links here. So for this pattern, or for this yarn, you get yarn to do this hat, and I think you can do the boot cuffs as well. So I think there's enough yarn to do both projects rather than pick one or the other. Generally, a hat doesn't take a full 100 grams of yarn. And boot cuffs are on the order of the same amount of yarn as a pair of fingerless gloves. So I think there's probably enough yarn here to do both projects. So you get the yarn, a project, a hook that goes with the project, and then in this case, a little stitch marker. There's always some sort of little gift. Oh, yeah. All right. So there's always some sort of little gift. A lot of times it's been stitch markers. I've gotten a little pair of scissors, and all sorts of other things. So the thing that is really interesting is what I missed in this little announcement here. This announcement says we have some exciting news. We've switched our hook tips to Clover brand hooks. Beginning February, there will also be 2 crochet tutorials for each box to go along with the patterns. And then a slight increase in the price to probably cover the Clover brand hooks. That's super, super intriguing to me because I only use Clover hooks. I've tried like 1,000 different types of hooks, and I just can't give up my Clover hooks. And so now there's an option out there. They're using Clover hooks as the metal portion of their custom hooks, and then this is a husband-wife team. The wife does the patterns and dyes the yarn. The husband turns all of the handles for the hooks by hand. And so just really, really cool to have a hand-turned hook with a Clover hook. And I talked with the woman who runs Leither Co. a little bit on Facebook, and she actually said that they've been using Clover tips since October. So I went back and I pulled out all of my hooks, and so I already have 4 of the set of 10, like the 10 metal ones that you can get from Clover. So this is I've got a 5.5, a 4.5, a 2 1/4, and a 375. So an F hook, an I hook, I think a B hook, and a 7 hook, which is a 4.5. So, I just thought that was really interesting. For those of you who are as attached to your clover hooks as I am, the Leither Co boxes now have clover hooks in them, with hand-turned handles. So, I used the 5.5mm hook to work up that blue hat that I showed on earlier. So this hat here, the pattern recommended a 5mm hook for the band, which I did use, and then a 5.5 for the base of the hat. And so I did most of this hat with this hook. It does take a little bit of getting used to. The hand-turned handles are a little bulkier than the regular clover crochet hooks. And so it does take a little bit of, like, getting used to not having my hand, like, as tight. But I think that's actually a good thing. I think it's probably a good idea not to just be, like, making a fist for hours on end. And have my fingers a little bit more relaxed and just a little bit more at ease. So I would say that the handles are a little bit too long for my, like, not too long, unnecessarily long for me. I don't usually go all the way to the end and use my hook this far back. I stay pretty choked up on the throat of my hook. But they are very comfortable. They seem to be very well made. They're certainly pretty, and now quite a bit more useful to me because they have the clover ends. I don't know what sort of magic clover powder coats or whatever they do to their metal on their hooks, but it's pretty addicting once you start using it. The hooks just glide through the yarn like a knife through butter. It's just something that I can't really describe. If you've never used a clover hook, either the Amours or the Soft Touches, I would definitely recommend that you pick up at least one and try using it. If you've got the extra money and you don't mind spending $35, you absolutely can get the 10 hook set from Amazon or usually Joann and Michaels if you have a pretty good coupon. I've mentioned this before, I have a camel notice that anytime they dip below $25 on Amazon, I just go on and buy a set. Because at the rate that I have hooks, like, in project bags and, like, down the seats of the couch, I constantly need a set of 10 hooks around. So if they dip below a certain threshold, I just buy them. However, the last time I bought them from sort of a sketchy third-party seller with not terrible reviews, but not great reviews, and they never did show up. So, Amazon refunded the money, but yeah, if you think that it's too good of a deal, it might be. All right, so for the other box that I just got, this one had the 4.5mm hook, which I just showed. But in addition to that, it had this beautiful blue and gray yarn. This is called Wonderland. It's a sock yarn. 100% superwash merino, 400 yards, 100 grams. It is Alice in Wonderland themed, was the theme of the box. And the little charm that came with it is an Alice in Wonderland silhouette around a clock face in sort of like a Tiffany blue. Sort of matches their boxes. Just kind of a pretty little stitch marker. Yeah. So, you can see it's got a real pretty sort of very pale white gray in here. A really, really beautiful dark blue. Without a lot of times dark blue turns navy. This is just a really intense, like, cerulean. And then a spot that I really like is in here where it's almost so lightly dyed that it's speckled. And actually there are some speckles in there, but like the blue's really a cool, like, it's more covered than just some speckles, but is still speckly. I don't really know how to describe that, but I really like the way that it's been dyed. There's also some blue mixed in the gray down on this end as well. There's some blue speckling. The patterns here I'm going to cover with the stitch marker. And then I can show you guys these patterns here. This came with a pattern for some leg warmers and then also a pair of socks. I would bet that you can probably get these short little, like 2 pairs of short little socks or 1 of each pair. My calves are probably a little bit too thick to get a pair for me, but a pair for somebody with thinner legs, maybe a kid's pair of those and then an adult pair of socks or something like that out of the Alice in Wonderland yarn. So, yeah. Anyway, for those of you interested in a crochet box and really like clover hooks, this might be the box for you. I have no affiliation with them. I just like getting yarn in the mail and it being a surprise. It's a huge bonus for me that the hooks are now usable in the sense that I will use them because they have clover ends on them. That being said, the hooks before were very, very nice. I got a couple that are solid wood and then they switched to metal tips and then they switched to clover metal tips. They're also offering a bunch of new options, including a wool-free option, starting, I think, next month. So they have a couple cotton box options. You can also get a yarn-only box if you want just yarn and no hooks. I think you might be able to get hooks only, but I wouldn't hold me to that. She might have done away with that option because it might not have been popular. And then I think you can also get clover hooks that are not hand turned, where they'll just send you one like clover amour hook rather than a hand turned. I think that option might be a little bit cheaper than the hand turned option. So I think there's a bunch of new tiers and a bunch of new yarn options. But all of those are available. They're a little bit pricey. It's not just a, like, you can, toss that in as like a $5 purchase. But for a hand-turned hook, a stitch marker, 2 patterns, and a hand-dyed yarn, I think it's a pretty decent deal.
They charge $35 a piece for the crochet hooks on their website.
Oh, my husband's saying that the crochet hooks are $35 a piece on their website. That's honestly not a bad price. Like the boxes are obviously a much better deal.
Well, I feel like you should just buy the box 1 month if you wanted to get the hook instead.
If for only $10, I think it's $10 more to get the box. For only $10 more, you could get the yarn and the patterns and the stitch marker. You might be able to order the hooks like as you want them though.
Yeah,
like,
you pick the size.
Yeah. So, he's just looking at the website and noting that the hooks are expensive compared to the value you get out of the subscription box. The issue, I guess, with the subscription box is that you don't get to pick the color of the yarn or the patterns or the hook size. You just get like a project sent to you. So, you have to be willing to deal with surprise.
What was the nice option for wool that just came out?
All
She's saying that she can't afford such a expensive. Oh, maybe she's allergic.
right. New Day Crochet saying wish she could use wool. I'm not sure if it's due to an allergy or if it's just because of availability or pricing, wool tends to be like good wool tends to be a bit more expensive than like a big box brand. But a lot of people are just allergic to it. So the like I said, the Leither Co. just added the option of a wool free box for that reason, probably because they got too many people who are allergic to wool asking for that option. So I don't know if she plans to do a like a direct replacement. So one will be 100 grams of fingering weight wool, and the other one will be 100 grams of fingering weight cotton, and she's going to dye them like roughly the same and use roughly the same patterns, or if she's going to do two completely separate boxes. New Day Crochet saying allergy. So yeah, that's a pretty common allergy, is a wool allergy. A lot of people are allergic to animals in general, dogs, cats, whatever. And wool is obviously a natural product. Um, so yeah, there's that allergy. Um, but yeah, so if you're interested in the box and it's in a price bracket, there is a non-wool version.
Just out of curiosity, it's not. Would superwash still be allergic?
Um, I don't know. So my husband's asking if superwash still bothers people with a wool allergy, and I don't know the answer. When they superwash a wool, they remove the scale on the outside of the fibers, which I think attributes like the dander portion and like the part that makes wool itchy. But I don't know if it's the part that people are allergic to. Because I don't know that it removes like lanolin or whatever out of the wool, at which point you'd still be allergic if that's the part you're allergic to. So I don't know. All right. Tracy's asking if I've ever used Melbrigo. I saw some projects and it looks beautiful. I have used Melbrigo. It is one of my favorite, like, if I want to make something for somebody and I'm not really sure and I just want like a really reliable yarn that I can just go to the yarn store and grab, Melbrigo is one of my go-tos there. A couple of my absolute like favorite everyday wear cowls are out of Melbrigo yarn. Yeah, they do a really, really nice job. Melbrigo is in the local yarn store category. It is hand dyed, but it is not indie dyed. So indie dyed means like independent. It's usually like one or two people at their house dyeing it in like chafing dishes or like on a pot on their stove. Melbrigo is like a whole operation, and they have like distribution, and they send it out to yarn stores, and the colors are pretty regular and consistent. But they are still hand dyed. They're not being machine dyed, to my knowledge. Like, I think they're still labeled all as hand dyed. So,
Do you have anything Melbrigo?
I just wore the Melbrigo scarf that I normally wear, so it's probably somewhere upstairs. I have one that's purple and then the other one is like purple, blue, green, sort of speckly. I'm looking to see if I've got anything else Melbrigo down here. Oh, this is the purple one. I've got the purple one, but not the purple speckly one. So this is, excuse me. This is the Sweetheart Cowl. I found this in Happily Hooked magazine. I think that's what that's called. It's now, I think, available as a free pattern if you search Sweetheart Cowl. I really like this cowl pattern. It's just real simple. The only thing I don't love about it is you can see there's like this lacy edge on the one end, and you start with this lacy edge, and I don't know why you just don't finish with it. Because it's so much harder to start with it than it is to finish with it. Because it would be very easy to run chains. Like, you could do chains and then double crochet, picot, chains, double crochet, picot, and it'd be really easy. But instead, you make these giant, like, this giant piqué. No. I found this one, though. yeah, for some reason you start with this giant chain and then you do a picot, and then on the next round you work into the tops of those stitches. And it's a very strange choice, but nonetheless, I really, really like the way that this cowl lays and wears. But this is Melbrigo. I've been wearing this cowl for, I don't know, 3, 4 years at this point. It's been washed several times. It's held its color very well. The only problem it's got is I lost a stitch, it looks like, right here. And I have not gone back in and fixed it. It probably just got snagged on something and broke. There's an off chance my dog chewed it. There was a very brief time where she got into some of my crocheted stuff and chewed very tiny holes in some of it. But yeah, this is a Melbrigo cowl. It wears really nice. Like I said, this is the Sweetheart cowl. It was in Happily Hooked magazine, and I think it's now a free pattern. So, lays very nice. It's a really good length for if you're wearing a jacket that's got a zipper, then you can kind of bunch it, like right here, and it lays really nice and keeps you actually pretty nice and warm. So, highly, highly recommend Melbrigo yarn. It's very good value for the money. So, if you go in and buy a 100% wool indie dyed yarn, you're looking at about $20 to $25. Melbrigo is usually more in the $11 to $14 range. So it's usually more expensive than a big box Michaels Joanne type of yarn, but less expensive than an indie dyed yarn. And that's true of a lot of local yarn store brands. So let's see. Shalene's saying, great question. I'm not sure if that was about the wool or about the about the superwash. Yeah, I'm still not sure about that. I could look into it a little bit. Just would depend on what part people are allergic to. Tracy's saying beautiful color on the cowl, very intense. Yeah, a lot of their colors are very intense. There's a cowl that's really popular right now called Dotty, Dotty. It's made with 2 different Melbrigo yarns, and I don't know what about it I just absolutely love. It's like a tan taupe colored yarn, and then they have it done in sort of a mosaic crochet sort of look, where some of the stitches are tan, and then there's like little dots of like a blue pink speckled yarn. It's just really, really pretty. And I don't know. I really like the way that worked out. So yeah, definitely like Melbrigo yarns. They're very good. Just like workhorse type yarns. Helen's asking how much does the box run? So on the Leither boxes, I think there's a bunch of different options now. I think I was paying $40 a month shipped. I think they were $35 and they went to $45. But I don't remember, honestly. If I'm being real honest, at auto bills, and I don't usually look. But I just sort of know that it's coming out once a month. Now that there's a whole bunch of options and there's a whole bunch of different things, I don't know all of the options, but yeah, you can definitely find it on the Leither website and look at all the different options. Michelle's saying would love to have USA pricing on yarn, big box $7.99 to $12.99 for Melbrigo. 25. I didn't think Melbrigo the last time I looked was that expensive, but I could be misremembering. I thought Melbrigo was down a little bit from that, but I could be.
Saying that that's how much Melbrigo costs in their other countries.
Oh, I guess you're Okay, maybe I'm misinterpreting the comment. Michelle, potentially, are you in like Canada and you're saying that the big box stores are $7.99 to $12.99 and Melbrigo's 25 there? Which I could 100% believe if that's Canadian pricing. Generally, when I'm figuring U.S. pricing on yarn, big box store is somewhere between $3 and $9. Local yarn store brands are in the $8 to $25 range, depending on how fancy the contents of the yarn are. And hand-dyed yarns generally start at about 22 and go up from there. With the most expensive being hand-dyed, Twisted Fiber Arts. If we're gonna name names, like Twisted Fiber Arts is the most expensive indie dyed, hand dyed yarn that I buy on any. I guess I don't buy it regularly, but I've bought a couple of times. We buy usually about once a year. We see them at a show. I'll buy one ball. They make a very, very, very nice yarn. But it is hands down the most expensive thing we buy. By usually like a factor of 2. It's usually twice as expensive as anything else. So, New Day Crochet is saying that they picked up superwash in a store to feel it and still had a reaction. So it must be a different component of the yarn that's not removed in the superwash. And Michelle's saying yes, she's in Canada and gets a hit with exchange and import fees and shipping. Yeah, it sucks. I don't have anything positive to say about that. Yeah, shipping's high and import fees are high, and I've imported the other direction and gotten some Canadian yarns brought into the US, and that's always expensive as well. Yeah. So a dyer that I know just from a Discord group that I'm a moderator for has a hand dyed store. I guess she's an indie dyer with a store named Insanity. She's out of Canada, so I've had some of that sent. That's what this shawl is made of. So, but yeah, she actually sent this for me to work up as a test project, so I didn't pay the import or the shipping, but I've had other yarns shipped in from Canada, and import and shipping always gets you. It's really unfortunate because there is a I don't want to say dyer, but a yarn seller that sells the stranded cotton yarns that where it's like 4 strands held together and they change one color at a time, called like MC Patterns or something like that. They're in Canada, but like just barely in Canada. I think they're in like Toronto or something, which is like just the other side of the road from Detroit. And there's been a couple of times where I wanted to buy stuff, but the cost of the yarn is actually really low because the stranded cotton tends to be on the low side, especially for anything like coming from a single person. So you can get like 200 grams of stranded cotton for the same amount as you're paying for like 100 or even less than 100 grams of like a hand-dyed wool. But the shipping on it is almost always as much as a full ball of yarn. And so I'll look and I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful color. It's $17 for 200 grams. And then it's $18 to ship it. And it's like, well, I don't know if I want to pay $32. And then it's like, well, maybe if I buy 2, then the shipping doesn't go up by almost any at all. And so then you end up like, I've got $100 worth of stuff in my cart just so that the $18 shipping doesn't sound so bad. And that I usually just don't buy any of it. So, But yeah, international shipping sort of sucks. Out of pretty much everywhere but the UK. I can get things from the UK in like 3-4 days, sometimes faster than I can domestically. And shipping out of the UK into the US is for some reason like really, really cheap. I don't know if the Royal Mail is just that much cheaper, but like uh, the few things that I've ordered from the UK, I've paid like $4 for shipping. Yeah, that could be true. That's like my husband was saying, it might just be the Wool Warehouse, which is where I've ordered from several times. But like shipping from the Wool Warehouse is, I think, cheaper than from Webs, which is yarn.com. And generally they have better selection and they can get it to me faster. So,
That slider that I just bought from the UK was $50 to ship. It took like a week and a half to get here.
yeah. So he's saying he ordered something from the UK and it was very expensive to have shipped. So, um, yeah, maybe it's just the yarn. Maybe it's just that place has some good thing worked out, or they're subsidizing the cost of the shipping by having slightly more expensive yarn or something. So, let's see. Um, let's see. Helen said I was gifted one that had bunny blanket. Oh, Leither box, that had a bunny blanket and loved it. So yeah, I remember that it was actually a really cool project, and I remember thinking, she went an an extra little step. So those boxes ship out, and they're supposed to have everything in them to do the whole project. And she went as far as to include safety eyes and accent, like an accent piece of yarn to finish the little nose on the bunny head. So it was a head and arms for a bunny, and then a lovey, which is like a small blanket attached to that. And it was either a bunny or a llama, now that I'm thinking of it. But either way, it had a little piece to finish the nose, and safety eyes, and the stuffing to fill the head, and like literally everything you could think of all was in the box. So like when it showed up, it just, you could do the whole project. You didn't have to go to the store for anything. So, yeah, the Leither boxes are really quite nice, at least as far as I've observed. Again, the yarn feels very nice. The hooks, I've worked with some of them. I've used some of the stitch markers, and they all seem fine. I have not worked up any of the projects. Like, I know I keep saying that, but like, it, don't take my word for it on the patterns, at least, and how it works up. But they seem very nice. They're a very cool, like, item to get in the month, or in the mail every month. Somebody's asking, let's see, Tracy's asking if I've ever ordered from Ice Yarns. She thought they were out of UK, but I believe Shalene's right. I think they are, at least the yarns from Turkey. I think the companies also run out of Turkey. Regardless, I don't think we actually have worked with any ice yarns. I've been in a couple of yarn stores that have ice yarns. They seem fine. The few that I've actually seen and interacted with have been very just generic acrylic yarns. So if there's something that intrigues you, they were of normal quality. There was nothing outstanding from what I observed. Yeah, there was one yarn that, I think so. There was one yarn that my husband really liked. I think it was an ice yarn, that was like a rock and roll or something like that. I'm trying to remember what that yarn was called. It was a very crazy looking yarn. It actually, I think, looks a lot like the Scintile, the Louisa Harding Scintile yarn that you really liked. Rockstar?
Looks like Ice Yarn's Rockstar,
Maybe. But yeah, we have not had any ice yarns here.
It's a chainette.
Yeah. So,
It's like a shiny chainette.
But is it very similar to the Louisa Harding Scintile? Which I believe is also a chainette yarn. That's that blue one that we got at, you know what I'm talking about? The hat that I made too big. He's kind of looking at yarns, so
because it's so shiny.
yeah.
Like
So there was one called Ice Yarns Rockstar, that's like a really shiny chainette yarn that we've talked about getting, and just haven't ordered it. It needs to be imported. I don't think we could get it domestically if I remember correctly. But yeah, the end of that is I have not personally worked with any ice yarns. I've seen it in a couple of stores, and they seemed like relatively generic. Like the ones that they were carrying were just pretty like baseline generic acrylics. It would have competed very well at the yarn store brand with like Plymouth or who's the other? Cascade. Like a Cascade 220 or a Plymouth Encore, just like stock single color acrylic yarns. So, let's see. Kind of going through here. New Day Crochet, it has to go. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Helen's just confirming what I was saying earlier, that that the box had everything in it. Talking about the Leither Co boxes. So, excuse me. Yeah. So that's really all I have to. Well, no, I take that back. I have one other thing that I want to show. So a while back I showed this. This is Premier's Bloom yarn. The idea here is that you work up this yarn, and it's got big sections of gray and then little sections of multicolored. And in almost all of them, I think there's 2 colors that are different, but in like 8 of the colors, you can get a solid color here. And I think you can get pink and gray and blue and white and maybe black. I don't remember. And then there's a section that works up into what are supposed to be these little tiny magenta flowers. So there's a part that's just pink and white, then it's pink, white, and green, and then there's just a green and white. And it's supposed to look like a little, sort of a pixelated flower. And I wanted to see how it worked up, and so I did a very basic single crochet square. So this is my very basic single crochet square. This is roughly what it looks like, just worked up. Oh, sorry. We'll go to zoomed in version of this, but this is just a basic single crochet square. And you can see here, this is the supposed to be flowers right here. And it's not perfect, but it works. There are some like little gray splotches in this yarn that are sort of randomly throughout the yarn, but for the most part, it's pretty. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. One of the issues with this yarn is that if you worked up a giant blanket, so this square is only 8 inches wide. If I work up a long blanket, this section is going to only be 1 or half a row tall, and so it won't pool into like a little flowery section. And so I decided I was going to make a baby blanket out of squares. I didn't really know if I wanted to do like all single crochet squares. That sounded kind of miserable. So I just went with it, and I decided that I was going to just start working up different stitches. So there's my single crochet square. And then I have a half double crochet square. This one only got 1 section of flowers in it, but there's the double crochet square. You can see the little floral section. And then I've got this is half double crochet. Single, then half double. This is double crochet. So this is a double crochet section. You can see there's also this random spot where it got like a splotch of color on it. But this is the double crochet. square. And then I think I did a corner to corner next, and that worked up very weird. Because the colors didn't really pool properly. So I've got like the pink and white section off on this side. And then the pink, green, and white runs sort of the whole length. And then the green and white section ended up over here. So it didn't pool properly. I also have a little weird pink and white corner on this one. But I've been thinking about it, and what I really want to do is sort of a crochet along. I think I'm going to use Facebook as the platform to sort of host it. If you guys are interested in doing sort of a block every 2 weeks and make a textured baby blanket, you do not have to use Bloom. But the thought here is that I'm going to make a baby blanket, and I'm going to sort of lay these out randomly, where each of the squares has sort of a different texture and is kind of fun. And so, like, there's sort of a rough layout of what it's like starting to look like. This is with Bloom, but this would work just fine if you did like 3 colors. So this square in one color, this square in a second color, the square in a third, and then on the next row you mix those up. You could do it all in one color, or you could do every square in a different color. Like, does not matter. But I just thought it might be fun for people who are maybe not perfectly new beginners, but just want to learn some new stitches. So I've got single, half double, double. But then I also have a shell stitch, a corner to corner, I think this was called an undulating or an oscillating pattern. You can, it's a little bit difficult to see here, but it's worked in, you work single, half double, double, triple, triple, double, half double, single, and then on the next row, you work the tallest stitch into the shortest stitch, and then sort of vice versa, all the way down. So your tallest stitch is in your shortest stitch, and your shortest stitch is in your tallest stitch. So the singles go into the triples, and the triples go into the singles, and half doubles and doubles and doubles and half doubles. Which evens the pattern out so that it stays straight, and you can still make a square. But gets you sort of like this wavy texture, which might not show up great on camera, but looks interesting. Yeah, you can see it pretty well on there. It's just like an interesting texture, but you still get a square out of it. So, that stitch, this is a moss stitch, which is just a relatively easy stitch. This one doesn't lay quite as nice. This one could stand to be blocked, but the flowers, I think, turned out pretty well. I think it goes this way. They don't look too bad on this one. They sort of just all look a bit like a old video game. Like, they have the feel of a field of flowers in an old video game. They don't actually look like flowers, at least in my opinion. And then this is a basket weave stitch. Which I knew they weren't going to really look like flowers in the basket weave, but I just thought it might look kind of interesting. And so they look kind of cool. And then I'm currently working on the rice stitch. I've got the start of a square here. So if you guys think that you would be interested in doing something like this where you work at some cadence, I don't know if it's one a month or if it's one every 2 weeks or what works for people, I would post a stitch tutorial. You can make the squares really any size you'd like to. I'm working with 8-inch squares. If you did 12-inch squares, you'd end up with a bigger blanket, but you'd use more yarn. I'm trying to decide whether I do 12 or 20 squares, so I don't know if I want to do a 3x4 blanket or a 4x5 blanket. 20 squares obviously gets you more stitches. 12 gets a more like manageable amount for me. But I've had a goal, and this is sort of one of my 2020 goals, is to get a Facebook group that's like functional and is a bit of a community. And so I thought maybe doing a crochet along might foster that and help everybody get like to know each other and be able to share their squares. I thought it might also be fun for people to be able to learn some new stitches. So yeah, that's where I'm thinking. If you guys are at all interested, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know either in the chat or in the comment section or on Facebook or Instagram. Both places you can either like direct message me or leave a post on Facebook or something. You can find and like I said, you can also put a comment in the comment section below. But yeah, if you think you're interested in doing sort of a baby blanket, one of the other things that I've seen, if you actually have little kids around, grandkids or your own kids, I've seen a lot of people doing texture books. So instead of making this into a blanket, you lay them all together, like so, and then you bind them along the edge just by sewing them all together. And then you have like a flip book of textures. I don't know how much babies actually like it. I know theoretically babies like different textures, but I don't know practically if they like a book of just textured squares. But that would be an alternate option. If you didn't want to make a baby blanket or a throw, you could sew them into one of the texture books. So each of these has a very different texture to it. I actually really like the way a corner to corner texture feels. It's got something just a little bit different to it than just a straight single crochet square, which is kind of a tighter, more rigid structure. So, Tracy likes the idea of the crochet along, as do Helen and Shalene. So, I'm going to try and put... Facebook has a group that, like, everybody can actually interact and works a little bit more like a group where you can post and, like, interact with each other. Versus what I think I have right now is a page where I tell you about my stuff. And it's like all my posts, and if you post on it, it goes to like some weird, like, somebody posted this on like a contributors page. That's not what I want to do the crochet along on. I want to actually build the group and be able to interact and like let you guys post what you're working on and what square you're doing and how it's turning out and all of that. So that is the goal. With that, it would also have a goal of doing tutorials for each of these stitches. So right now on the channel, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and corner to corner are all available in some form. I don't know if we would redo them just to the 8-inch square or if we would just give general guidelines on how to make an 8-inch square, and then follow the instructions of the tutorials that are already there. But then there's some interesting shells and, you know, very popular stitches, like basket weave, that people might be interested in learning how to do. So, if people are interested, and it sounds like at least several of you in the chat right now are interested, I think we will give that a go. So, and then by, I don't know, a few months out, I think we'll have a baby blanket that we can stitch together. Full disclosure, I have never joined squares together, so I have no idea what I'm getting into there. I have every confidence that I can do it, but I just haven't yet. So we'll be learning together a little bit there for those of you who have not made a baby blanket out of squares, or a blanket out of squares. Michelle's asking if Ravelry has an option. I don't have a group on Ravelry. I suppose we could make one if that's something people are interested in doing that way. They're not difficult as far as I know. I just don't know if people will cross post or if we'll end up with like two factions. Shalene's saying that the texture book's a great idea. I think it's an interesting idea. I just, like I said, I don't know how interesting it is actually to babies. It looks like a really cute idea. I just don't know if the textures are sufficiently different. Like I know little kids like different like things to feel. Like there's obviously books with Velcro on like a hedgehog, and so it's spiky, and then you turn the page and then there's fluff on a cat, and it's different textures, but these are I think more subtle texture differences. So that being said, my sister's goddaughter absolutely loves just sitting and going like this on crocheted blankets, and she'll pretty much only use crocheted blankets. She's got a few from, I think an aunt of hers crochets, and she just sits and like rubs them through her fingers. So, all right. Michelle's saying she's not on Facebook. I'll give it some thought and see what we can do there as far as running the crochet along in two different locations. This is the first time I've ever done it, so I'm a little bit worried about running it in two spots, but we'll see what we can do. But yeah, that's really all I have for tonight. So I don't know if you guys have other things you guys want to talk about. We talked a little bit earlier about sewing in ends without a needle. But other than that, I don't think I've taken a whole lot of questions from you guys tonight. Helen's saying she's made several square blankets where all the squares were always the same. I think the goal here is to get them roughly the same size and then block them all to the same spot and then sew them together. So that's at least my goal, is to make either 12 or 20. Like I said, I haven't really decided yet. Squares, and then sew them all together. So, Shalene's saying you could get big rings and bind them that way. I was actually thinking shower curtain rings might work, like plastic shower curtain rings, because they would be like really big and thick, but like relatively safe. They don't open, or I think you could let a baby chew on a shower curtain ring. I don't know what kind of plastic they're made out of, but I think they're generally fine. They would be better than using metal rings for babies to chew on. At least I think. So, Shalene's saying that Thursday she's doing a photo shoot with all her beaded scarves. I'm interested in seeing all of those. Yeah, we've been talking about beading and doing a bunch of stuff there. One of these days I'll get a beading tutorial out. I haven't really been up to recording much other than this stream. Between work and just coming home, I've just been like exhausted. So, we haven't done a whole lot of outside filming, aside from the live stream. So, let's see. Tracy's finishing up a granny stripe poncho. Realized too many stitches at the beginning. Now the neck opening is way too big and it slips off shoulders. What's the best way to fix this? Probably the way to fix it is to add like a single crochet sort of neck. And what you could do is go through and single crochet. So I'm not exactly sure what the poncho looks like, but if it's a granny stitch, it's usually 3 double crochets and then like 3 chains, 3 double crochets, something like that. What you could do potentially is go in and single crochet like 1 in every stitch, and then do like single crochet 2 together, which is a decrease stitch. So you get half as many single crochets on the next round. I see a little bit there. My husband was bringing the picture over so I could see an example from Ravelry. But yeah, I think your best bet is probably to do a single crochet in every stitch, and then start doing decrease rounds. So you could do single crochet, decrease, single crochet, decrease, or you could do decrease, 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 where you single crochet every 2 together. You're just going to have to play with it a little bit to see how it lays. What you don't want to do is have it pucker weird. So you might have to do more rounds than you want to in order to get it to come down enough that it'll stay on your shoulders. But that's about the best I can do just off the top of my head. You could probably alternatively sew like an elastic in. But that might be trickier than just picking up stitches. I think that's probably what I would do is crochet, single crochet all the way around, and then decrease sort of somewhat slowly. Maybe single crochet, decrease, and then on the next round, single crochet, decrease, and then on the next round, decrease all the way around. It really depends on how many stitches you need to remove. So,
Is there anything you could do with like those crochet circle things with the stick that you put through to like?
oh, my husband's just suggesting a shawl pin.
Could you like fold it in some nice looking way and then shawl pin it?
Yeah, so I suppose that's also an option. It just depends on how it lays and how much room you've got. You could potentially fold it and run a shawl pin so that it looks nice, without having to add extra stitches or extra time on that end. I don't know how it lays on you and if you've got a shawl pin that will work, but you might be able to basically fold it so it folds under and still lays really nice, but you can pin it with a shawl pin. So that's more of a just depends on how many extra stitches you've got. If it's 4 or 5 that you need to take out, that's just barely causing it to slip off your shoulder, or if it's like gaping and won't stay on for anything, you might have to do different things. Michelle's saying adding stash to Ravelry so I know what I have hidden. Maybe as an idea, or maybe that's just what she's working on. I'm not sure if she wants to talk about how to do that or if she's just saying that's what she's working on. So maybe if you can clarify there, Michelle, if you're asking me how to do that or if that's what you are doing and you're just telling us, which is fine. I just wasn't sure if I'm supposed to act on that comment. Helen's saying she's never done basket weave or moss stitches or squares. Done squares with flowers in the middle and granny stitch squares. And then put them all together. So yeah, that's a pretty popular way to do blankets, is a small granny square and you do a bunch of them, or flowers in the middle and work around them and make those into blankets. But this will be a slightly different type of squares, but should work in roughly the same way. And Tracy said she's both ideas might work. So hopefully one of the two gets you to be able to wear your poncho. There's not really a whole lot of things worse in the crochet world than making something that doesn't fit anybody. Especially if you like intended it for yourself and you want to wear it and it's just too big or too small or whatever. Michelle's saying that's what she's working on. So putting, adding to stash, um, a couple of different, like sort of towards the beginning of live streaming, we did some Ravelry like hints and tips. One where I showed how to use the stash feature and like add your yarns. Um, I wish I had done that a long time ago, so I have a better idea of what I have on hand. At this point, it would be like an insurmountable task to actually do that. Um, I would probably actually have to like employ an intern to do that at this point because or take 2 weeks off of work, neither of which is going to happen. So, the stash feature is probably dead to me. But other than that, um, yeah, I actually really liked the hook feature. So you could also like use Ravelry to track which hooks you have, which was really good when I was first starting out because I would be at the store and I would say, okay, I need a eye hook. I don't remember if that's one that I bought, and I could go on Ravelry and I looked and I used that for like the first, I don't know, 3-4 months that I crocheted. I have every single hook. I have multiples of every single hook. I have probably 20 of like an eye hook. That feature is not of much use once you've got a few years and a hook buying problem. So, I don't know. Um, Sort of feel a little bit the same way about the stash. Like, I buy way too much yarn to track it all. It would be a really, really huge task, but I get like how useful it would be if I had been very diligent about doing it. So, um, let's see. Tracy said she's making the poncho with lime brand landscapes, and the colors are beautiful. So she hopes she can salvage it. Lime brand landscapes is one of those yarns that is very polarizing. It's very, very much like Red Heart Boutique Unforgettable. It's absolutely stunning, but can be a real bear to work with. Like we were talking about earlier on the stream, it's a single ply, like loosely spun yarn. So it can have some frogging problems, and if you pull too tight, it'll just like separate and fall apart. Um, but yeah, it really comes in just beautiful colors. So, I hope you are able to fix the poncho and make it wearable for you. So, um, so the little pop-ups up there, if you ever have questions about working with yarns or like Tracy asked about fixing a poncho, if you ever have questions like that and we're not live streaming, feel free to send that to me on Facebook or Instagram. You can use a direct message at Experiments in Crafting and send them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. You can always comment on YouTube as well. I try and answer YouTube comments and answer direct messages. Sometimes I fail and take a day or two or a week, depending on how busy the week is. But I will do my best to get back to you as fast as I can. So if you've got questions, send them to me. I'm always happy to help. So. Oh, my husband was actually suggesting that if you wanted to share the poncho with us, just so we could see it, you can also send things like that to at Experiments in Crafting on both Facebook and Instagram. I think on Twitter it's at EXPTS in Crafting. I think that's also my thing on Ravelry now too. It's not Experiments in. I think it's EXPTS in Crafting. I changed it from my old name. Um So yeah. We have an email address. We just don't really use it for anything but like it just sits there and gets notifications. So we do have one, but the likelihood of reaching me through that is pretty low. Using any form of social media, Ravelry, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube comments. I think you can also post in the YouTube community tab potentially. I think you can post like pictures and stuff directly there. And I think I'm the only one who's posted on there, but I think you can use pictures and stuff on there. I don't think you can post pictures on a comment of a video, but in the community tab, I think you can post pictures. So all of those are going to be better than just an email address. Like I said, that email really just serves to be the like login for accounts. So we don't really do much with it. Yeah. So that's really all I have for tonight. I will start working on the crochet along. We'll probably start with a very basic square, single, half double, double crochets, just because that'll get me moving and those videos already exist and give me a little bit of lead time to make some of these more complicated stitch videos. But get everybody started and everyone can pick their yarns, and I'll try and get the Facebook group set up so that everyone can use it. I would say watch the community tab, Facebook or Instagram, all for crochet along details. And if you have any questions or you're not finding things, again, message me on Facebook or Instagram, or you can comment on this video. So, if nobody has anything else, we'll probably wrap up for the evening. And the plan is always to stream at 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights. That's 8 o'clock Central Time. We're in Illinois, so if Illinois time helps you better, I guess theoretically they're trying to get rid of daylight savings in Illinois, so at some point we'll actually have to say Illinois time because it'll switch, but that's not relevant right now. Yeah, 8 o'clock Central Time. We always try and stream on Tuesdays. Sometimes things come up and we can't stream. But yeah, I will get together the crochet along and hope to see you guys next week. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great week. Bye.